yesterday's grilling. What is your thought about everything?
Well, actually, for close to 9 or 10 days now, nationally we've had very prolix arguments concerning the issues to do with the security detail attached to the person of the Deputy President, Honorable William Ruto. And these arguments have been, to some extent, objective, to some extent, political or politicized. But what comes to the fore, in my perspective, is the issue to do with the policy that could be, or the gaps within the policies in place within the Ministry of Interior with respect to protection of VVIPs in Kenya. Matters to do with parental protection or executive protection is a matter of national security and interest. And what is dumbfounding from where I sit is, one, the issue of the numbers, yes, of security personnel attached to the DP. Second, not just the DP alone. We should, the Minister of the CS for Interior should have gone further, and also today other VVIPs that are from state protection. But beyond that, it is also dumbfounding that we do not have clear-cut policies and even legislation, a failure on the part of the ministry itself, that the deployment of security detail to high-level state officers is a matter that is not balanced by policy. So by the fact that it's dumbfounding to see the kind of, or the scale of security detail attached, say, to the Deputy President and various issues to do with him or his interests, it also shows the lack of proper leadership and direction, even in that ministry itself. The other issue that comes to mind for me is, as well as this, what is the scope of state protection for these VVIPs? Does it mean, for example, that, because when we are protecting VVIPs, we are protecting them against harm, against risk, against threats in the course of the discharge of their duties. So, for instance, as it was laid bare yesterday, when businesses or private entities of state officers are protected, to what extent, for example, is a dairy project and its protection an issue that would affect or harm or raise threats to the execution of office of the person being protected as a high-ranking state officer? Examples are rife the world over. For instance, when you look at the United States of America, they have got Secret Service that protects the president, deputy president, and even former vice presidents and their families. For former vice presidents, for instance, it is up to the period of 6 months after they vacate office. Here in Kenya, then a question arises. For persons that have held such offices, for example, Abudi Awori, former vice president, Kalonzo Musyoka, former vice president, Musalia Mudavadi, former vice president, to what extent are they enjoying state protection, and what is the scale of the security detail? These are issues that have not come to the fore for open deliberation. And I think we run the danger and great risk of politicizing security issues. When you examine Article 238 of the Constitution that lays bare the principles of national security, which of course must be interpreted within the breadth and the brackets of Article 259, that says the interpretation of the Constitution must be done in such a manner that, well, purposibly, even guarantees good governance amongst the slate of various principles and guidelines for interpretation. Good governance is the issue here. When we see security officers deployed in such a manner to the DP, for example, president, cabinet secretaries, to what extent are we seeing even good governance frameworks and policies within the office of the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, the National Police Service Commission? In fact, the national conversation this moment moving forward should be, what is the role of the National Police Service Commission working in conjunction with the Cabinet Secretary for Interior to see the manner in which the deployment of security officers is done in this country? And that's dumbfounding.
policy gaps. Let's not just forget that Ruto's Secretary of Communication, that is David Mugonyi, sent a statement to newsrooms yesterday, and he did say that the Deputy President has been in office since 2013, and it is now decideful for the CS to suddenly realize his residence was not a protected area, hence now not entitled to the GSU protection. Talk to us about that back and forth.
Well, I think it is disturbing and alarming that now there is the politicization of this entire security agenda. In fact, objectively and purposively so, one thing that the Cabinet Secretary should now point out is the direction. For example, expeditiously, how are they going to purposively review internal policies for deployment of security officers? When you look at, for example, the back and forth that has been there between, from the Office of the Deputy President, then the Ministry of Interior, and then now how it's played out even in the media, the political implication and the consequences of this. Let us start by appreciating one thing, that the security of the Deputy President, the security of the President, Cabinet Secretaries is a matter of national interest. In fact, even the airspace of the official residence of the President, that's the State House, official residence of the Deputy President, should be and of course are protected areas, and even air surveillance is something that should be taking place. It's not a question of doing a favor to do such kind of protection, even for Cabinet Secretaries, because anything happening to the President, to the Deputy President, to Cabinet Secretaries as they execute their duties is a matter of national concern and has got very many ramifications or consequences. And so I think it is imperative that the administrative and policy issues regarding this issue of security and protection of the Deputy President should be divorced from the kind of politics at play. The other thing is that it is important for certain issues around the specifics of the detail, security detail of this high-ranking government officers, not also to be laid quite open, because it now even heightens or exposes these government officers to various threats or potential harm. And so I think there is a bit of laziness, if you permit me, or some unnecessary political interests that are coming into all this matter. But actually and factually speaking, it is and should remain outrageous that private businesses of high-ranking government officers should be protected in such a manner by elite security officers who should be offering those services on, to wananchi in various places or deployed in various areas of interest. The other thing is that I think, given the extent to which the Office of the President and the Deputy President are tied together, in fact, marooned together even by the Constitution, it must not be sharply looked at only from the perspective of the Office of the DP alone. And that's why my fear is that there seems to be so much politicization of this entire thing. And I think if we go to that direction and also assessing the kind of discussions, outrage, how protracted it has been, whether online and even in the newspapers, we are missing the boat by the river. So I think it's important for this debate to be brought back to where it belongs. The administrative, security, and policing issues to do with the protection of high-ranking government officers or state officers.
All right, Javas, let me take you back a bit and we go down history. If you look at the history of security provisions for Kenya, vice and deputy presidents, and even the prime minister, going all the way from 1964 till the prime minister position, that was in 2013, all these people had less than 60 officers under them. And now here, all of a sudden, we're seeing 257 placed in the DP's office, business, home. What changed that all of a sudden now, there's need for more security officers?
The million-dollar question is this. What was the rationale for such deployment? Was it at the behest of the Deputy President that he requires this number of officers for various private and official interests for protection? Or is it that it was at the liberty of the Deputy President, working in conjunction with the National Police Service and the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, for such deployment. Because for me, how I look at it, it is from the compound perspective. For these officers to be deployed, does the officer in question make the request? And if at all such request is made, what rationalization is done on the part of the National Police Service and the Cabinet Secretary? Concern is to ensure that such facilitation is done in terms of deployment of security officers. So this issue is not one-sided. That's why I talked about the gaps, limitations, and failures by the various duty bearers. One of the duty bearers here is the National Police Service Commission, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, and of course, even the Office of the DP should now clearly respond to this, that how did they come to have 257 security officers deployed to the protection of the interests of the Deputy President? Because comparatively, if we look back and say that initially even Vice Presidents had 57, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga had 57, what was the wisdom behind the multiplication by more than 4 times of those officers initially deployed to the protection of the person of the Prime Minister, as he then was Raila Odinga, or even former Vice Presidents, as they then were Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, as they served during their time. So here it's a question of proper response. We do not need state officers to speak with so much water in the mouth, politicizing this issue. They must explain, for example, how do they get to send or to assign these officers to these persons. So in the absence of a clear policy that gives direction to that, then all these things will fall through the fingers. And therefore the blame will be, yes, even on the persons that exposed all this yesterday to the surprise of the entire country.
All right, since you've talked about the fact that it has been politicized, so then did the Deputy President and his team fall for that trap?
Well, the Deputy President and his team actually rushed into a landmine area, political landmine, and we can see the kind of PR disaster that he's finding himself in. In fact, it will take a bit of time for this cloud to disappear from the skies of the Deputy President's political PR positioning. And given that we are in this electioneering period, most things are likely to take political tangents. And so it has left so much egg in the face. Because, for example, beyond the fact, maybe initially it was presumed by him and on his part that the discussion about security services deployed to his residence, the discussion about this will be limited to his official residence. But now see, for example, the extent to which the Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Fred Matiang'i, has gone now to lay bare the kind of security officers deployed to protect various interests of the Deputy President. And then one wonders that if at all this has happened to this extent, did the Deputy President foresee such kind of explosion? What other landmines have been set up on his path that he's likely to walk into? So with these advisors and strategists, they need to be clearly careful with rather sharp instincts about issues that may come on his way or regarding him right now, even moving into the election period. Because as, from the time he declared his interest to contest the presidency, then everything would be looked through those lenses of his ambitions and aspirations, of course, the office that he holds. And fact is, he does not have everybody as supporting his bid. He has got various political enemies, those challenging who are going to challenge his candidature. And so he needs to be very careful about any issue that he raises, because one, any matter of concern from the office or the person of the Deputy President is a matter of national interest and national concern. So he must be very careful, and his advisors very careful, that this is, I think, the worst PR disaster that he has suffered since he announced his candidature, or actually even since he assumed office as Deputy President. This is just so bad. He needs proper way of managing it.
So then, yes, you have mentioned he needs proper way of managing this. How fast can he recover? What are the options that he has?
The exposure or the expose by CS Fred Matiang'i has left the DP limping. And he needs to get a good political physician to help him regain his footing very fast. And this means that he needs not to cast so much his sights on the securitization of his interests or his person and his office. In fact, he should shift the bet completely. He should avoid discussing this. The other thing is that even his supporters, we've had lots of noise from hangers-on and even various MPs concerning this entire matter. I think the DP should try to avoid even getting deeper into this discussion, because the deeper he goes into it, the more he tries to elaborate it. He cannot save his skin and face concerning, for example, that elite squads protect, for example, his poultry farm and various other farms. Nothing can save that. So actually he needs to go on the opposite side of this debate and see whether he wants to lie low a bit and heal from this for a few days and then start discussing critical issues of national importance regarding even his own candidature. Otherwise, the more they continue harping on the strings of these security protection issues or the security detail issues, the more he is harping at his very open wound.
All right. Thank you very much, Javas Bigambo. Let's see how this plays out.